On the quiet afternoon of April 23, 2006, in the small Canadian city of Medicine Hat, a young boy set out for a playdate at his friend's house. He walked up to the Richardson home, a typical house on a typical suburban street, and knocked. He was expecting his 8-year-old friend Tyler to answer. No one came. He knocked again. The silence felt wrong in a way a child's mind struggles to name. He moved to a window, cupped his hands against the glass, and peered inside. What he saw through that window shattered his childhood in an instant. He turned and ran. When police arrived, they crossed into a scene of almost unimaginable violence. In the basement, they found the bodies of Mark and Deborah Richardson. Upstairs, in his own bedroom, 8-year-old Tyler was also dead. The carnage was absolute, but one family member was nowhere to be found: their 12-year-old daughter, Jasmine. Police immediately feared she had been kidnapped. An Amber Alert was issued. Everyone thought Jasmine was a victim, but the evidence found in her school locker would soon tell a much darker story, one that suggested she had been planning this for months. But within 24 hours, police had tracked a pickup truck 130 kilometers away to the town of Leader, Saskatchewan. Inside were 23-year-old Jeremy Steinke and Jasmine Richardson. She wasn't a victim, she was a suspect. Before the darkness, the Richardsons looked like a family that had earned everything they had. Mark and Deborah met in the early 1990s in a drug recovery program. They had both stared into an abyss and chosen each other instead, building their lives from almost nothing, relying on food banks in the early years, scraping by until Mark's career finally turned. In 2005, they bought their own home in Medicine Hat. The dream was real. Jasmine was bright, popular, and made the honor roll at her Catholic school. 8-year-old Tyler filled his weekends with friends and playdates. To anyone looking in, this was a family that had won. But beneath that surface, something was quietly and catastrophically changing. Around the age of 11 or 12, Jasmine began building a new identity. Darker, more extreme, deliberately removed from the life her parents had worked so hard to give her. She started dressing in gothic clothing and gravitated toward online spaces like Vampire Freaks. Calm, where she wasn't the honor roll student, she was runaway devil. Her online path led her to a real-world goth crowd, and through those connections she encountered 23-year-old Jeremy Steinke. Wait, it gets crazier. Steinke was a man operating outside the boundaries of reality. He had endured a traumatic childhood, and by his early 20s had retreated entirely into a fantasy world of his own construction. He would tell acquaintances, without irony, that he was a 300-year-old werewolf. He wore a vial of blood around his neck. On his MySpace page, where his profile name was Soul Leader, he listed his interests as killing and blood. As dark as his online world was, the messages Jasmine was sending back to him were even more disturbing. He was unemployed, living in a trailer, and completely consumed by a delusion of power and darkness. His own friends were repulsed by his interest in Jasmine. They saw it immediately for what it was: a predator grooming a vulnerable child. But to Jasmine, steeped in rebellion and feeling profoundly misunderstood by her parents, he wasn't a predator, he was an escape. Their relationship deepened in the secrecy of private messages, and what those messages revealed was not a crush, it was a conspiracy. It was Jasmine who first put the idea of murder into explicit words. In one message to Steinke, she wrote, "I have this plan. It begins with me killing them and ends with me living with you." A responsible adult would have been horrified. Steinke was not a responsible adult. He wrote back, "Well, I love your plan, but we need to get a little more creative with details and stuff." When her parents discovered the relationship, they did what any terrified parents would do. They grounded Jasmine, banned her from seeing Steinke, and took away her computer access entirely. To Mark and Deborah, this was an act of desperate protection. To Jasmine and Jeremy, it was a declaration of war. Steinke's response was public and savage. On a blog, he wrote, "Their throats I want to slit. They will regret the expletive they have done. Their blood shall be payment." On the night of April 22nd, they watched Natural-Born Killers together, a film about a young couple on a murderous rampage. Then Jasmine went home. Later, Steinke put on a mask, got in his truck, and drove to the Richardson home. Jasmine had left a basement window unlocked for him. Deborah heard a noise and went downstairs to investigate. She turned on the light and met a masked intruder. Steinke stabbed her 12 times. Mark came running to help, armed with a screwdriver. He was stabbed 24 times. In his final moments, Mark reportedly asked his killer a single question: why? Steinke's alleged answer was, "It's what your daughter wanted." Upstairs, Tyler had been woken by the commotion. He was 8 years old and terrified. He tried to defend himself with a toy lightsaber, but the decision to kill him had already been made. Evidence confirmed that both Steinke and Jasmine were present, and both later admitted they had consciously, deliberately chosen to end his life. Their stated justification, given without apparent shame, was that he was too sensitive to be left an orphan. This was not panic. It was not an impulsive act carried out in the heat of violence. It was a calculated decision made in cold blood by a 12-year-old girl about her own little brother. When investigators entered the house, the main floor told a story of an ordinary evening violently interrupted. A half-eaten bowl of popcorn, a dessert left in the kitchen. The basement told a different story. Tyler's bedroom had become the final setting of his 8 years on Earth. With Jasmine unaccounted for, police moved to her school, hoping for a diary or a note, anything that might locate her. They didn't find a diary, but as police dug deeper into Jasmine's life at school, they realized this wasn't a sudden explosion of violence. It was a plan she had already put on paper. What they found in her school locker changed the entire nature of the investigation. It was a 12-panel hand-drawn cartoon. The first frames showed a stick figure representing Jasmine, sad, unhappy at home. In the fourth frame, she meets a dark, demonic figure with spiky hair. They are shown together, happy. The demonic figure sets a house on fire. In the final panels, the Jasmine figure runs away from the burning house with the man, and they are shown together, smiling. It was not a child's idle fantasy. It was a premeditated, step-by-step roadmap to murder, drawn by a girl who already had her family in mind when she drew it. But it wasn't just the plan that was disturbing. It was how she acted once it was over. Psychologists who study young killers often see something called affective flattening, a complete absence of expected emotional response in the immediate aftermath of extreme violence. Not grief, not panic, not remorse, simply nothing. A clinical blankness where horror should be. It is, in many ways, more disturbing than rage, because rage is still human. Flattening is not. In the hours after the murders, Jasmine and Steinke went to a friend's house. Witnesses reported seeing them laughing, kissing, and cuddling. Their demeanor, by multiple accounts, did not resemble trauma or shock. It looked like celebration. The following day, a police tactical team located Steinke's truck in Leader, Saskatchewan. He and Jasmine were arrested without incident. The violence that had consumed an entire family ended quietly, on the side of a road. In custody, Steinke quickly undid himself. Believing he was confessing to a sympathetic fellow inmate, he admitted in detail to killing Jasmine's parents, not knowing the man was an undercover officer. He was quick to redirect blame for the most unforgivable act of the night, claiming it was Jasmine who had personally murdered her little brother. Throughout, he described their actions not as a triple murder, but as a profound expression of love. Even in jail, The delusion didn't break. They exchanged love letters. He proposed. She accepted. It was in the first moments of her arrest that Jasmine asked a question that has followed this case ever since. She didn't ask what would happen to her. She didn't ask for a lawyer. She showed no distress, shed no tears. She looked at a police officer and asked if she would still be able to go to school. The legal outcomes for the two killers marked one of the starkest contrasts in Canadian criminal history. Jeremy Steinke, 23 at the time of the murders, was tried as an adult. In December 2008, a jury found him guilty on 3 counts of first-degree murder. He received 3 concurrent life sentences with no possibility of parole for 25 years. He has since changed his name to Jackson May. He will almost certainly die in prison. Jasmine Richardson, because she was 12 at the time of the murders, fell under Canada's laws and meant she couldn't be tried as an adult. This led to a sentence that still shocks people today. On July 9, 2007, she was found guilty on 3 counts of first-degree murder, making her the youngest person in Canadian history ever convicted of multiple murders. The maximum sentence available for her age was 10 years. She received it, 4 years in a secure psychiatric facility, followed by conditional community supervision and a period of probation. During treatment, she was reportedly engaged, cooperative, and expressed remorse. At her final review hearing, the presiding judge told her, "I think your parents would be rather proud of you." In May 2016, at the age of 22, Jasmine Richardson completed her sentence. She walked out with a new identity, her record legally sealed. She has never issued a public statement or apology to the surviving members of her family or the community she destroyed. For everyone else, there is no new name and no sealed record. The boy who knocked on the door that April afternoon is a grown man today, permanently marked by what he saw through that window. The first officer to enter the house has said publicly that it is a scene he never wants to encounter again. And in Medicine Hat, the scars have never fully closed. The Richardson murders remain a permanent reminder that the darkness, when it comes, does not always arrive from the outside. Sometimes it was already living inside the house.